Norm Kopp will be joining us. Norm's been with Adept for probably 7 or 8 years. I'm guessing is kind of my recollection is 7 or 8 years. SolidWorks customer, big migration off of Smart Team, a lot of PDM experience. So I'm really excited about what he's going to share. We consult with Norm. We consulted with him over time on our SolidWorks integration. We're partnering with them on a Solid Edge integration as well.
Good morning, everyone. Okay, a little bit about me. Thank you, Scott, for the introduction there, too. And worked over 30 years within engineering. Extensive knowledge on standards, my standards. Engineering processes, including project management. Been responsible for doing 2 different CAD and PDM platform migrations to the one currently being used within our surface engineering division, Adept. And I'm happy to be here. So a little bit about Joy Global. We design and manufacture mining equipment for both surface and underground applications. We have global facilities. We have technology on our machines. We service our machines in our facilities as well. So we're direct service with our customers. The minerals that we are doing mining in is coal, gold, diamond. Okay. The products that we manage inside of Adept are all the surface products. Okay. There are other PDM systems in our organization. There's 5 of them. In the last 2 years, I switched roles from an engineering manager to an IT manager, so my world is fun. I'm talking about Adept because it's the one that is furthest down the path from a process perspective. All the other PDM tools that are in place are primarily just vaulting tools. So there's no workflows, there's no metadata that's being moved. Okay, a little bit of a timeline. In 1992, P&H Mining Equipment, which was the original company, we got rebranded a few years ago, teamed up with a software developer in California called Logicom. And we created a PDM system called EDMS. And we deployed that within our organization in 1993. And it managed CATIA V4 files. We also did ECMs, which was our release process. So we had a workflow, we tied documents to the ECN, and we released them. In 2005, we migrated from Smart Team and then to CATIA V5. So Smart Team was out there as a Dassault product that allowed us to move out of CATIA V4 to CATIA V5. So we migrated to Smart Team and left the software company that we were partnering with. Assembly-based CAD was the killer for them. They didn't know how to manage that, and we weren't going to invest any more into that organization either. In 2007, we migrated to SolidWorks, and I'm not going to get onto a CAD bashing thing, but there are plenty of reasons for us to move out of CATIA V5 to SolidWorks. And we stayed with Smart Team because it was still a Dassault product. It still had integrations with SolidWorks. Our next step was to leave Smart Team, again, because of other reasons. We did our investigations with 5 different PDMs. We had our criteria, we weighted the criteria, and ultimately we chose Synergis Adept. So we did that in 2009, the full migration. 2008 was spent figuring out how to get the data out of one PDM to another one, and our processes that we were going to put in place. Okay, so some of the customizations that we've done in Adept, we had the luxury of having some IT folks that got trained in the API and did some development for us to make us more efficient. So we created our own plugin for SolidWorks Bills of Material that were automatically created when we signed into drawings. So we hijacked it on the sign-in, created an XLS file that represented the bill of material, and we did things with that file, which I'll talk about. We developed a solution that takes that BOM data, and it's also used in our ECM, and also goes to SAP. So we have a very strong desire to do everything in a 3D CAD platform, push it to the PDM, Adept, and then push it to other systems. We also created a plugin for part numbering creation because we had our own style. We created a plugin called Tree Walker, which I'll talk a little bit more about in a few minutes here, but it does a where you up and down the relationship tree. It's a nice function. Again, we'll talk about that in a little bit. And there's some other ones that we did. So Send SAP was a plugin. New part number I already talked about. New NPD number. So we had a separate number generator for new product development. Tree Walker, we had Right Hemisphere, which is now SAP visualization. So we did a automatic conversion upon release for that solution. List drawings to ALS, and then drawing classification. We haven't rolled out drawing classification, but that is all about IP protection. So the engineers now label the high, medium, and low value to the organization from an IP perspective. So Scott talked a little bit about the partnership that we have with Synergis. We spent a lot of time with Joe Gasper and his team on the SolidWorks task pane integration, did some testing and some feedback to that group. Currently working on Solid Edge integration. I'll be meeting with them Friday morning in their offices to talk a bit more about that. Tree Walker code is now in the product. It's called Relationship Search. So we handed over the code to Joe Gasper and his team, and I'm sure they tweaked it a little bit. But it's now in the product. There it is, the Relationship Search plugin. So that was something that we showed the folks at Synergis shortly after our rollout of Adept, and they loved it and said, we got to get this. So a little bit about what our deployment looks like at P&H, which is Joy Global. We're currently running Adept 2014 Service Pack 3. We're a little bit slower on releases for two things, SolidWorks, and then all these custom applications that we did. You got to test them all. So, number of users, we have 149. Number of seats is 175. Most of them are the desktop clients. We do have a few web clients. We've never gotten around to doing something with the web clients. You might think, well, geez, how come you got 175 seats and only 149 users? People that are related with the mining industry, it's been down. So we've had a lot of reductions with employees. So we have more seats. We're hoping it comes back and we'll use those seats up again. It's a very cyclical business that we're in. So users, we've got users in engineering, operations, technical publications, and product support. So the people that are supporting our equipment out in the field also have access to Adept and the documentation that's inside of it. Locations, Milwaukee is our primary location. That's where most of the users are sitting. Cleveland, Ohio, Longview, Texas, Hunter Valley, Australia. And currently within the database is just over 1 million files. And those are the latest releases. And we do have one seat of Publish Wave to generate files for reviewing and printing, which is a separate solution. Hopefully someday it's in the same solution, Adept. Okay, so products that are managed in Adept. So this is our main product. It's an electric mining shovel. It's a rope shovel. This is completely managed inside of Adept from a CAD perspective. Everything is in SolidWorks. There are over 60,000 unique components in this machine. A new shovel that we released about 2 years ago. It's a hybrid shovel. It's diesel electric. It's called Pitbull. We manage that product. Blast hole drills. Which drills a hole in the ground that you put explosives in and fragment the rock. Dragline. That's the biggest piece of equipment we make. 6,000 tons, 100,000 unique parts on it. And then Mine Air is air conditioning now for these products. So it's a product line that we have as well. So, issues. Robert talked about some. This would be a big one, for us anyways. So, shared drives. We looked at 10 shared drives, folders on shared drives. Users accessing these folders, 675. Okay? And inside one of those folders is over 1 million files, over 2 terabytes. Who's got access to these things? Access is way out of control. So we went and we asked ourselves a couple questions here. Why are these folders on a network to begin with? What files are in these folders? Who are the users? Do I want these people to have access? If it's engineering data, do I want the service people to have access? Do I want product marketing to have access to it? Probably not, especially if it's design calculations, right? Why do they need access to these folders? How do they find what they need? And do they only have the latest file? Those are significant challenges when you start putting files out on the network. So there's got to be a better way, right? At least one cup of coffee. All right, so here's what we're going to cover through the remainder of this presentation. Review how and where documents are typically stored and managed. So we're going to revisit this just a little bit because I'm going to go through a scenario that I think happens in everybody's work environment. I know what happens in ours. We're going to talk about a bill of information, a BOI. It's a tool that you might be able to use. And what's the best practice for a bill of information in Adept? Cultural changes and how to overcome. I don't know if I need to talk about that because Robert did a great job on that. He did a really good job. But we'll touch on some high points there too. Okay, so has this ever happened in your workplace? Hey Kurt, I'm looking for the design reports for the BOSS project we did 5 months ago. Do you know where they are? Not sure, Nancy. They could be anywhere. If Harvey was still here, he'd know exactly where they are. I sure hope I can find them soon. I need them for a meeting later today. Sound familiar? So where does Nancy go? The file room, right? We've been in business for over 125 years. I got one of these, okay? You probably have one too. Maybe it's not as big. That's not a picture of ours, but trust me, it looked like that many years ago. You might rummage around Harvey's desk. Maybe you got access to his computer and you start looking on the C drive, maybe his network share, where is the stuff? Okay, and then of course the network folders that we're talking about, a lot of people dump things on these network folders. All right, so Tech Clarity, if you guys don't subscribe to Jim Brown, you probably should. He's got some good stuff. Anyways, he did a survey for the top design challenges and the results from 2,500 companies. So Nancy and Kurt are not alone. And I think most of us probably share a lot of these same things. But you take a look at the challenges, sharing with other departments, finding the right information, managing change, reusing data. And we're talking about Adept, we're talking about PDM, right? So we have the capability. Most companies still have the same problem. So I want to talk a little bit about PLM, so this is my introductory slide. So Desktop Engineering, along with Synergis, created this practical PLM document. It's on Synergis site. Go ahead and take a look at it. Some really good information on there. But the key point here is product data management, PDM, paired with enterprise systems, provide a practical way to break collaboration bottleneck and streamline design cycle. You said PLM though. Isn't PLM this big monster software thing? No. No, it isn't. PLM is not a piece of software. It's a definition of a business approach and process of managing a complete set of product information through its life. And I got some news for you. PDM is always going to be the backbone. You already have Adept. You're sitting here in this room, so you already have the backbone. Everything else is process. So bill of information. Does anybody work with bill of information? Okay, good. So bill of information relationships, they can be part to part, process to document, part to document, document to document. So it's all about relationships, right? You have that capability in Adept today. It completely defines the product. It can include specifications, certifications, and other critical documents. All right, so what does this thing look like? So Sim Data, again, another good resource, and they offer a training class on certification for PLM. If you really want to get into this stuff, go take it. It's really good. I took it. So this is what a BOI looks like. All right? So you've got this thing called the item. It's there in red. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. And you got all these documents, and you see all these relationships that are going on here. All right? That's what's on my network folders. Other people have that too? You got software, you got FEA results, you've got test results, you got tooling, you got fixtures, okay? All that stuff is sitting out on my network shares. This is what I manage in Adept. It's my CAD stuff, and it does a really good job of it too, right? With all the integration stuff, and if we go back and take a look at the requirements for bringing in Adept, it was all CAD related. Nobody talked about these other documents. We knew that it did it. You know, we knew the integrations were there, but geez, we're engineering, we're very centric about CAD, and we manage that really well. But the key for BOI is that item. And how do I manage that item? And then all the relationships with it. So we can create this in Adept. It's not called item, it's an unlinked record, okay? So how do you create one of these things? If you have an opportunity after this presentation will be posted, go play with this a little bit. I encourage you that. So File New is where you're going to go. And you have the opportunity to check the Unlink Record radio button, name it what you want it to be named, and I'll talk a little bit more about naming in a little bit, and you click the OK button. In our case, we want the users to come back in and put a little bit more information. Again, it's the metadata that matters because I want to be able to search the database and get something back. So we say, I want you to put the model in there and a description of what that item is, the BOI item. All right, so Robert talked about ease of use. Drag and drop, is it pretty easy to do? It's awfully easy. So highlight the files that you want to now link to this item. It's not my CAD data. It's all these other documents that are sitting out there that I want to know about and want to have control of. So I highlight those, right mouse click, and create a relationship. It's that simple. You get a dialog box that shows up, and it shows my parent being the bill of information, my Unlink record that I just created, and the files that I've highlighted, and make it a child. Hit OK. If I look in the relationship browser, there's my relationships. Awesome, right? It'll get better. Okay, what about the CAD stuff? Okay, because again, engineers are probably the ones that are going to start the ball rolling on a bill of information, right? Because they've got maybe some quotes from a purchased, for a purchased component. They might have some of their design calculations and all that. So they're going to start the ball rolling here, okay? So they want to create a relationship for their CAD data to the BOI, and I'll show you why in a little bit too, as to why they want to do that. We'll talk about change later. So it's the same thing, it's drag and drop. It's going to create a relationship for the BOI to the assembly. If I hit OK, relationship browser looks like this. Okay, so I got my CAD assembly at the top, I got my BOI with all of its relationships here. Okay? And remember, I came from CAD, right? Engineering. Oh boy, that CAD thing. God dang it. Okay, so building that relationship is one way of doing it, but there's a better way. If we take a look at the integrations that are happening with the CAD tools, ours is SolidWorks, it's a primary tool. Oh, by the way, we've got 8 different CAD tools at Joy Global. Remember, I'm in IT, I gotta support them. Anyways, so if we do an assembly and we use the task pane integration, you drag it in there, you know, and you take a look at the virtual library. Does everybody know what the virtual library is? Okay, it's pretty cool, right? It takes the files out of the user's face, it puts them someplace, they gotta go look for them if they really wanna find them. So if I do the relationships the way that I just did, this is what's gonna happen in my virtual library. You see the documents that came out? Because I had the relationships built in Adept to the CAD assembly, it's going to take all those other documents and put them in that virtual library. Okay. Remember, I've got these large assemblies that I'm doing. If I've got all these other files that are coming along for the ride, what do you think is going to happen with my efficiency and my productivity and my CAD performance? It's going to go way, way, way down, right? And I'll probably run out of room on my C drive eventually. So let's go ahead and delete that. So again, it's easy to do. All I got to do is right mouse click, delete relationship, comes up with a dialog box. I hit OK. Bam, they're gone. Okay? Here's a better way. So if you recognize what I had before in a previous slide, I took the CAD assembly and dragged it, how did I drag it? Doggone it. I took the BOI and dragged it into the CAD assembly is what I did. Okay? I want to do the reverse. I want to take the CAD assembly and drag it to the BOI. So I'm going to flip that. Okay? So now I got my assembly that's going to be a child to the BOI. That's what I want. And I'll show you why. I hit OK. My relationship browser now looks like this. A lot different than the other one, right? Because my bill of information was buried inside my CAD assembly. Now it's up at the top. My CAD assembly is down below it with all of its components. My virtual library now looks like this. That's what I want, okay? So you get better file relationships that way, and you also get some other benefits. If you're going to sign out some files with the old way that I did it, look where it puts the BOI in the dialog box. It's buried in there. Remember ease of use? How am I going to train my users to recognize this and make sure that they check the right box? It's going to be tough, right? If I go the other way, well, the BOI is at the top. CAD data is below. Okay, so we talked a little bit about the CAD integrations, but I also want to remind you that Adept does a great job with that, but we also have the other Office applications, right? So you've got Excel, Word, and so on. And just as a reminder, you can map those property values over, write your metadata. And if you're going to use my design calculations in this example, why wouldn't I take advantage of that integration? I'm only doing it once. That's efficiency, right? Only one time. It goes along with our CAD process where we put all the metadata in the CAD files and proliferate it through the rest of the tools. Same thing. Comes through on the library card. Fantastic. If I want to add some more metadata here, I can do that. So this is one that we've just done a little bit of looking at, and it's actually pretty cool. But you know, there's the Outlook integration. So some people like to manage projects in Outlook. I know some of our engineers do. Some are better than others. Not the best way to do it, but maybe your request system is using email. I don't know. But you get attachments that come through, and maybe I want to manage those. I would recommend a different way here in a second. But I can actually, well, let me step back here. There's my little laser pointer here. Right there. Save to Adept. If I hit Save to Adept, you get the same dialog box that you will for a CAD file. I can pick the library I want it to go in, and look, it's got attachments. And I unchecked my picture because I don't want another picture of me inside of Adept, right? Heck, I don't even want the picture on the email, but there it is. I hit OK. It goes ahead and saves all of those into Adept. Fantastic. The issue is that if you're passing email and you're passing those attached files and you try to save that email into Adept because it had critical information that you wanted to maintain from a design perspective, and they're duplicates, now what? Okay? So don't let Outlook be your document management tool. It would be better to attach an ALS file. Does everybody know what an ALS file is? It's like a shortcut that you attach to the email that you double click on, and it's going to launch you to those documents in Adept. Okay, that would be much better. And if we take a look at what it looks like inside of Adept, I've got my email, the 2 attachments. If I look in the relationship browser, there they are. Okay? So if that fits your process, go ahead and use it. I'm just pointing it out because it's another tool that is in the toolbox that some people use and some people don't. We're still looking at it. We're probably going to go down the ALS side of things because I think that this encourages using network shares. All right, if we take a look at the BOI, of course I can link this email to my BOI. It'll look like this. My CAD assembly is still down at the bottom. I can explode the tree. I can see my email plus its documents. If I do a where used, this is where some of the stuff starts to become really cool. I see my drawing because my assembly is tied to the drawing, and I see my BOI. So I know I got other information out there now. Besides my CAD files, my bill of information is going to tell me more. Excellent. It's the indicator. So some recommendations on numbering, because this was one of our challenges of what are we going to call this thing and how are we going to do this moving forward. So we said that the bill of information file name should be the same name as a 3D CAD part, because that's the stuff that I'm going to be looking to manage and change going forward. If you don't have the 3D, then of course link it to the 2D. Another reason why we chose the 3D was, at some point in time, we're not going to create a drawing anymore. So why not start now and start linking it to the 3D, right? Everybody's still drawing centric, I get it, but if you take a look at what SolidWorks is doing and what Inventor's doing and all the other CAD tools, they're pushing more of the 3D annotations, and at some point we're not going to be creating drawings.
So you're not going to be creating drawings, you mean screen printable?
Correct.
2D.
Correct. That's way in the future, trust me. The company's 125 years old. The workforce out in the shop wants a piece of paper. It's going to take a while, but eventually it's going to get there, especially with the younger generations coming up, right? Everything's on their phone, everything's on a tablet, so it's going to happen. That's who's going to push that more. The current workforce is not interested other than a piece of paper, right? Even within engineering, same thing. Okay, so all the other, from a file naming perspective, it doesn't matter, but try to get some consistency. So when you're searching Adept, you get the results that you're looking for. So in this case right here, if I search on one of our part numbers, it's R72434. Here's my results. I'm going to see my bill of information, I see my drawing, I see my assembly, and the other related parts that are associated with it. Okay, so it's just something to think about. What do you want that process to be?
When you create your Unlink Record, have you considered using some kind of standard artificial extension so that you can use that for your
We have talked about doing that. Yeah, we thought about putting like bill of information in front of it. As far as a file extension, we did not look at file extension. We looked at more of the naming stuff. So that numbering is going to get us the results that we wanted. Again, your environment is going to be different, but something to think about. Okay, so I'm looking to manage these relationships. So how does that help engineering? If I do a change now to something and I search for that part number, because that's what I'm going to change, the part number, then the drawing. If I do that search and I have a bill of information, okay, I get my results based on my search criteria, and I look at my relationship browser, it tells me all kinds of things. All right, so I've got a vendor drawing that I got from the vendor. Do I have to change that? No, but I know it's there, okay? I got some pictures. Maybe I want to take a picture of the compressor when it came in. I don't know. I want to manage it here versus a network drive, because what happens on the network drive? Where's that information? Oh, I found it. What's the first thing that people do? I'm going to create a new folder, norm stuff. I'm going to take that file, I'm going to drop it over here, and I'm going to name it something else, right? I mean, that's what people do. So there's all kinds of information in here. I've got the manual and parts list, okay? So I've got a document for that. I've got an NC program in here. So this is an example. If you wouldn't have an NC program, most likely for a purchase component, unless you had to do some additional modification. But the idea is that this is not just engineering centric, it's everybody. Okay? If you looked at the BOI slide, we had NC programming, we had tooling, we had fixturing. Could we have sales in there? We could. We could, because they create documents, right? Everybody in the organization is creating data. Everybody. Everybody's creating a file and they're sharing that file. So from an engineering perspective, if I'm making a change to this thing, I see I got an NC program there because I'm going to put another hole in this part. Okay, so as I review this from a change management perspective, not only do I have my engineering documentation has to change, but I also have documentation that has to change from an assembly instruction and an NC program. So now I have a better understanding of what my change impacts are and the cost to the organization. If I just do it from a CAD perspective, I only have my engineering time, but that could be sometimes just a small part of that change, right? There might be more change, more cost on the manufacturing side, especially in our environment, because everything that we make, for the most part, we design, manufacture, and assemble out in the field. Big deal. So thankfully, Robert was before me because we got some of the same bullets, I think. So why are we doing this? Well, from our perspective, we looked at bringing in Adept as a CAD management tool. Our previous PDMs was the same thing. The one that we home built for CATIA V4, that was straight up CAD, nothing else. Smart Team was just a direct replacement of the previous one, and all we did was manage CAD documents. So yes, we knew Adept did it. Some people don't realize that it does it because they shop for PDM the same way that we did. It was CAD, okay? Never thought about using it to manage other than CAD. Have thought about it, but these are my files. I'm not going to share my files. If I share my files, I'm going to lose value to the company. Now, this compressor scenario that I put together really happened. So I was working in engineering as a support manager. We're looking at service parts because if we don't provide good documentation on service parts, because remember, we service our equipment with our customer, that's big revenue, right? So we're looking to create the parts for service on this air compressor that we purchase. So, okay, I know who the compressor guy is, so I go up to him and I say, hey, Dan, I need to get this information. Well, what I didn't tell you is the first 2 times I went upstairs to go see him, he wasn't there, okay? So I finally got a hold of him and I said, hey, I need the service parts for this air compressor. He goes, yeah, I got that. Opens up his drawer and he pulls out the manual and he says, right here. I said, well, geez, do you have this electronically? Oh, yeah. It's on the C drive. It's on my C drive. Well, can you like put in an Adept or something so I can have it? I don't want to do that. He was the guy, right? He was the guy. You got to come see me. So management won't support the process or the additional time. Remember how we started? Nancy and Kurt looking for stuff? All right. So here's a challenge. Talk with your manager about other engineering documents and relationships to a design. You may not want to manage all of them. Maybe some of them. Maybe start out, with just design calcs. I don't know, okay? Start with something small and figure out the process. Remember, we talked about PLM. That's why I had to drop that PLM slide in. And your backbone is PDM. In this case, it's going to be Adept, right? It's there. The functionality is there. It's all about the process that you want to put around it. There's value there. There is extreme value there. And figure out what works best in your environment, because it's not going to be the same. Ours is going to be different than yours and yours and yours and yours. Everybody's going to have their own. Okay, and then remind management of control of the files. Remember the copying? How many duplicates do you think I have in those million files? Which one's the latest? I don't know. Especially when it comes to design calculations, right? So managing access. So I have 675 people that have access to those folders. God only knows what they're doing with that information. I don't have an audit trail in there. Okay, product knowledge is now shared. You have confidence in that documentation that's inside of Adept, right? You know it's the latest one. You know it's the authorized copy of it. And I can share it. I feel good about sharing it. So other advantages. No recreating of data, because if you can't find it, what ends up happening? Nancy is going to have to recreate something, right? Or somebody else that works for her. So if it's CAD files, you know, that's one thing, but what about all the non-CAD files? You know, there's just as much time sometimes spent on those files in the creation of that data than there is the CAD files. So if I can leverage by putting everything in Adept and building those relationships, why wouldn't I? Because we do recreate information when we can't find it. Everybody does. Improve quality and cost. So I'm not reinventing the wheel, right? If I have a quality issue with a component and I actually have some of that documentation in here and I come up with a new design, I can go look at what failed before and make it better. Or if there was issues on the manufacturing floor and I'm documenting with a red line, okay, improve quality, cost, it's all about my recreation of data and the time spent looking for it. You said 35 minutes? I bet you it's more than that because everybody's creating data. I bet you it's twice or 3 times that. Okay, what is that going to do? I got more time to innovate because in engineering, at least, is not going out there and recreating information because they can't find it. So some tips. Don't link to the drawing. Again, only if you have 2D, you have to go down that path. Link it to the 3D. Think about the library controls. So you got to do some planning on the front end of this thing. If you're going to put a process together, of course, map it out. We call it OpEx. Robert called it Deming. We call it operational excellence. You cycle it through. You figure out what that process is. Figure out who needs to have the read-write accesses to the libraries, who needs to just have view. You know, map it all out. Just don't go drop something out there. Start in engineering. They're the ones that are going to create most of the documentation at the start, right? So do it there before extending into other parts of the organization, because I referenced like NC, right? Well, engineering doesn't have anything to do with that. But if I give them the vehicle to now put their documents and manage their stuff inside of Adept, why wouldn't they do it? If it's easy, right? Why wouldn't they do it? So then if I can build a good process for engineering, show them the value of it, I bet they come along because I know where they're storing all their stuff. I know it. So start in engineering, small, then start looking at other parts of the organization. It can be the front end and the back end. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Norm.